objects.
Really?
Green.
I put it up against another.
If
And then
Yeah,
were in
I
school,
remember.
It was
It's not even the shape.
Negative.
Mentally ill. Mentally
Did
disabled.
a special effects agency.
We are back here, Ethan Clerc podcast show. Good to be back in the attic. I think we're going to call it from now on. The Wayne's World studio, as Mike might refer to it. Good to be back here, though. Colin producing again this week. Special guest on the podcast, Mike Laven. Thanks for joining us, Mike.
Well, thank you. Glad to be invited. I appreciate that.
It's this is episode 84 of the podcast, and we went quite a while without having guests, but now we're trying to get back to it, and so we're looking for interesting people. We've been wanting to get you on the podcast for a while because you are a city council member
That's correct.
at large.
At large.
What does that mean?
That means the city has 5 wards or neighborhood representatives on the city council.
Yeah.
And then I'm the at-large representative that represents the whole city.
Oh,
The mayor
okay.
and I are both at-large. That means we can certainly live anywhere outside of those 5 areas, so we're in the city. But we represent the whole city as a whole. So all 39,000 some odd people that are here.
And see, this is one of the things, we have a lot of younger viewers that might not know too much about civics and
Sure.
like city council stuff. I didn't realize that you had to live in your ward
Yes.
to be the city council member.
Those 5 individuals live within the geographic boundaries of those wards. So when you look at a map of the city wards, you'll see that each one of them is in that area. And so those get redrawn every 10 years with the census. Having the opportunity as a city council member, I was first elected in 2000.
Yep.
So I've gotten to sit in on the redistricting of those. And because I'm at large, I don't have any political stake into that. So we have done a really good job. When we redrew the lines in 2010, we got each ward within approximately 0.27% of the median number for what they could have a variation of. We can go up to 1% variation on the total. So if we take the 5 wards, divide equally in fifths, and so we were within 0.27 of that median
For population? Okay.
So we did balance it out, and we didn't care where anyone currently on the council was living when we drew those lines.
Yeah.
Which, again, on the state and federal level, you hear a lot about gerrymandering, and that can happen. In theory, it could happen here in Mankato, but the reality is that we're a nonpartisan council. We don't have party affiliation at all. So that plays into probably the purity of this, but also when you look at the demographics of the community as we continue to grow, there's density near the university, for instance, but as you get to the eastern and southern parts of town where we're growing into the township, that is spaced out a little bit. And again, it has to be taken in a moment in time with the census. So 10 years ago when people were here on the map, now 10 years of growth, here's the new line. So that all gets factored in.
Yeah, and Mankato's growing pretty quick. I don't know if you know the rate of which it is growing.
We're, on a year-by-year basis, it fluctuates, but it's averaging about 2.5% to 3% a year in population growth. So it's a steady growth. And so it does, I think, I'll back up. When I was elected in the year 2000, we put together what is called what was it called at the time? The Mankato Area Transportation and Planning Study. And it looked at where every road would need to go in the next 40 years. And in turn with that, it was, well, what development would be needed to support those roads, and vice versa, the roads support the development.
Yeah.
And so where Prairie Winds Middle School is now today, now 5 years old, there was a blotch on a map, on a colored map, to say this is about where it should go in this general area. So it wasn't a big shock to me that it ended up where it did as much as it did for other people. And same with the growth and development, the roadways that head over to Eagle Lake, really that whole corridor on 22. That was the far edge of Mankato back in 2000.
Yeah.
And again, 20 years later, we've grown into that and past that. But most of that growth has happened almost to the letter where it was supposed to happen and how it was supposed to happen. So it's sprawling, yes, but then on the other side of the geographic side of it is we have 2 rivers on the south and the east and west side. West and north. West and north side of Mankato.
Yeah.
That prevent us from growing. I mean, North Mankato's on one side.
Yep.
Hillier Township, South Bend Township is there, so you can't grow that direction. So we have to grow. But again, most of this is kind of how we expected it all to happen. At least from my perspective on my experience on the council.
Is North Mankato growing too, Mike, quite a bit?
Yeah, they're growing at around the same pace. Maybe it's 4% 1 year, 2% 1 year, but it's around that 2 to 3%, and that's the balance it will be. And it could be argued that they're more a bedroom community in Mankato, but I would say that they have enough commercial and industrial growth that they can sustain, and they do sustain. It's just a balance of it. I think the school district's probably a better indicator of how the growth is. The growth that they're seeing is in Madison Lake and Eagle Lake and the east side of Mankato when it comes to, well, when's the next school building need to be built? And is it going to be expanding high schools or middle schools, or is it growing or building another grade school?
A whole nother one.
Yeah. So those are the decisions they're looking at, and that, to me, that's a bigger indicator of where we're growing and how we're growing as a community. And again, the school district's larger than Mankato. It's Mankato, North Mankato, Eagle Lake, Skyline, South Bend, Lake Washington, Skyline. I think I may have missed a town there, but
what's the total population for that whole all those?
The greater Mankato area, which is a metropolitan statistical area, when we hit 50,000 population as an urban center between all those things I just mentioned, that kind of raised a flag on the federal level when it came to economic funding, both economic development, but also transportation funding. So when we hit that 50,000 mark, that changed how we do our planning. It's truly regional. I'm the council member representative on the Mankato area, North Mankato area planning organization, which is now what the MATAPS, that transportation study, has become. It's now become a regional transportation planning organization to say, what's your next look at? And we just this past Thursday, we approved our transportation plans through 2045. Now they're amended every year. And actually 5-year amendments as well, so we can adjust as times change. But we're already looking at, well, what things need to occur in the area through 2020 or 2045.
2045.
So we're looking 25 years out of, here's, if everything stays consistent, the growth, the development, here's what it'll be. Now, granted, a pandemic that's lasting anywhere from 18 to 24 months is changing that. But also, here's what's planned, or at least we have an idea of what we could do. And again, that's really, it's virtually 95% of that funding is federal funding that's there for communities to plan for the future. So that way, when you expend those state and federal transportation dollars and transit and roads, bridges, all that money is being used wisely, and there's a plan for it.
That's smart, yeah. And I was going to ask you, why do you think Mankato is growing, like, I wouldn't say tremendously, but it's definitely on a path of growing? Are people leaving Minneapolis? Are people leaving small town Minnesota coming here? Are people coming from out of state?
I first got elected, I thought, it's because we're draining the Janesvilles, the Wasekas, the Fairmonts. We're draining everything out of South Central Minnesota, and they're all moving to Mankato. That was my naive look at it. That occurs. But, as all of us as individuals, we have preferences of where we like to live, and also the cars we drive and how we want to drive. Do we want to commute for work or commute to home? And so, it's how you want to do that. Well, I can work in Mankato, but I can live in Mapleton. Or I can work in Mapleton, but I can live in Mankato. Those are options, or the Twin Cities, what have you. So after I got elected and started really asking questions and having a little bit better idea of what I had for information, it's a combination of that, but at the time, we were a retail magnet. At the pinnacle, we had a little over 4 million square feet of retail space in Mankato with various malls and big box retailers. We have the university here, which is an important factor. It draws people. We have regional health care, both in the Mankato Clinic and the Mayo Health System. And then the one that I think a lot of people forget because it's the city, but to me, it's tremendous. Between Senex Harvest States and ADM, those two facilities crush more soybeans in North America than anyone else.
Really?
So
I didn't know that.
So we are the pinnacle in North America. Wow. There's only 2 facilities in the world that are larger. One is in Brazil and one is in China.
I was going to say China probably.
Yep. So we crush more soybeans in Mankato, the 56001 zip code, than all but 2 places in the world.
Wow.
So that, the ag economy, as much as we're a city, the corns and soybeans are incredibly important to what happens because it not just draws those services there and those facilities don't employ a lot of people because it's very mechanized. So
Yeah,
it's not like
yeah.
there's 2,000 jobs there. But it's critical to what happens because then you can live in Mapleton or you can live in Fairmont or you can live in Amboy, you can live in St. James, but still go to Mankato for the things you don't have available in your community.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was figuring it was because people. I mean, if you live in Wyndham, you come up to Cato to go to
Right.
the mall,
Yep.
go to Walmart, Target, or any of the small
Buffalo
towns.
Wild Wings.
Buffalo Wild Wings.
But yeah, and you know, on that same note too, our families and you know, I think it's generational. The idea of traveling to Mankato for our grandparents you do that on special occasions. But all of us are like, it's only a 40-minute drive. I'm going. You know, you think about the folks you know in the Minneapolis, St. Paul area who think like, oh, you live way down in Mankato. And you're like, dude, I can get to your place in an hour and 10, and that's
Literally.
if I'm obeying the speed law. You know, so I mean, it's like, you know, I had someone say that to me the other day, like, oh, I got to go pick someone at the airport, so I'm not going to be able to do this. And I'm like, what time's their flight? I'm like, that's like 6 hours. Like you could go back and forth twice if you wanted to.
Yep.
What? I'm like, yeah, you got plenty of time.
People think driving an hour is crazy, but we're just used to that.
We're used to it around here.
Exactly. And you know, again, on the East Coast, if you drive an hour, you're 2 states away in some cases. And, you know, you look at Connecticut and New Hampshire and all that up there. But, you know, here it's like, or you're in New York and you move about a block. So, so I mean, yeah, it's that, you know, you drive to qualify for work or play, but I think that kind of factors into what's happening with the change. The idea of, again, you can afford to live in a smaller community, but you can have the amenities of that. And again, a regional center will do that. So it's not unique to Mankato. You know, you look around the country, whether it's, you know, Rapid City, South Dakota, or you look at, you know, Columbia, Missouri, it's 2 hours from St. Louis and 2 hours from Kansas City, but it has the University of Missouri there. That, you know, so I mean, it's a regional center.
Yep. One question I wanted to ask you, Mike, is a lot of people have asked me if I know before. Why is there North Mankato and why is there Mankato? That seems like a common question for people around
Exactly. You know, 2 separate counties.
Oh.
So if you go back into the 1800s, Mankato was 1865. Nope, that's the university. So 1852. Yep, there we go. 1852, I think, is the right one. Mankato was incorporated. North Mankato wasn't incorporated. They just celebrated their centennial. So, 1902?
I'm bad at math.
1900. So yeah. So I mean, it maybe a year or so ago. So I mean, that's just the growth and development to the area. Skyline is its own city, which is on the southwestern side of Mankato. But when you look at a map, you don't really see that.
Yeah.
But that's just more on geographics because it's up above a hill. And then, that's kind of where the growth and development has occurred.
So North Mankato is its own city because it's in a different county.
In large part, it's in own city, own county, established differently.
I thought Mankato was in 3 different counties.
No, it's in 2. We touch into Nicollet County on the north side as you get out to 169 towards the Happy Chef in there.
Yeah.
North Mankato kind of floats along. The riverbed used to run as you leave the downtown area. It used to slide over where Henniker Pond is, the pit.
Really?
And then it used to run along the side and then come back on its more natural path it is today.
Huh, I didn't know
So
that.
there's more of an S. But the flood, if I've understood this right from everyone who's told me, I believe the flood of 51 changed that river channel to where it is today.
Huh.
So if you're at the Perkins on 169, you're still in Mankato. But if you go behind that to like FedEx, you're in North Mankato.
So there's an invisible line back
there's
there.
an invisible line along there. Yeah, I
Wow.
think that's Patterson Street, I think. So
Well, now everyone knows.
Yeah, it's when you look at a map, it does weave a little bit.
Yeah.
And it's just because it's the geographics of the time. And again, start to go back to the 1800s and stuff, then all of a sudden it makes more sense why things got laid out the way they did.
History.
Whether you agree with it or not, it's another story.
Yeah.
Mike, is that Henniker Pond's nickname, the pit?
Yes.
Oh,
The pit used to
I
be a
didn't
gravel
know
pit.
that.
I never heard
It
that.
used to be Henniker Gravel used to own the pit.
Okay.
Oh, that's why it's there?
Yeah. And so when I was growing up, it was a very unsupervised, lots of broken glass and metal things sticking out of the sand, and you were cautious of what you did and things like that. Now it's a park. So
Everything's safer nowadays.
yeah, everything's safer nowadays. That is so true.
They did build that very nice water park right Where is it? Like right
It's
by
pretty close to
Henniker
Henniker
Pond?
Pond.
Oh, that's the North Mankato swimming pool.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
did they renovate it completely? Or?
Yeah, they just this last year they rebuilt it. It was 25 years old or so. The bottom it originally started out as a heated pool, so that whole thing was a heated pool. Then the heating system fell apart about maybe a decade ago, so they changed the pH level to be able to just go cold water. Then the liner that separated it from the earth started to give way again, deteriorate. So there was actually seaweed in there, like it was a
Really?
lake. Yeah. And I mean, it got to the point where it was like, well, this isn't any better than a lake, is it? You know, but you have a
This
fence
isn't
around it.
anything better than Henniker Pond.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. So they made the investment into changing that and making that.
It looks very modern.
Oh, it is. Yeah, it's people love it. So
Yeah.
that's great.
That is great. Mike, how did you get into politics? What would make you want to
That's
step into the firestorm?
I will. I'll say I never wanted to sit on the bar stool or couch and say this is how it should be done. I didn't want the audience that way.
Yeah.
But in the late '90s, my wife and I were living along North 7th Street, and it's right where Pioneer Cemetery is, where it merges with 6th Street. And we heard the city had developed this new transportation plan to open up the hilltop, and we lived right along that hilltop. And we're like, well, what's that mean? So if you go where 6th and 7th Street blend and merge, they then outcome right at the bottom of Thompson Ravine Hill on Thompson Ravine Road. That used to be a gravel road that ran up to the hill.
Oh,
and then
really?
it was a township road that ran all the way out to Highway 22. And then for us who lived on that end of town, that was how we got to the mall the back way, because no one drove.
That's
that.
before Toyota moved there.
Well,
and
yeah.
everything.
So that was all open. So we said, well, whose idea was this? We never heard anything about it.
Yeah.
So some neighbors, my wife and I, and neighbors started showing up at city council meetings, asking all these questions. And I remember going to the library and renewing my library subscription to take out the Mankato Area Transportation Planning Study, which was about a 5-inch thick multi-ring document of this 20-year transportation plan. And I had to check it out 3 successive times because it took too long to read, and I'm no engineer by any stretch of the imagination. So I went in and read it, and I go, okay, I don't agree with what's going to impact my neighborhood, but there's sound planning and policies behind this, and it makes sense. And I'm thinking, well, if it makes sense to me, okay. So fast forward, that was 97. 99, the mayor of Mankato resigned abruptly, like literally faxed his resignation in on a Friday night and disappeared.
Really?
He was going through a divorce, had some financial issues related to that, and just literally left town in the middle of the night.
Wow.
So KUIC shows up at his house. They do the stereotypical panning in the windows. You see like a random box laying there,
Yep.
and everything's, no furniture. Everything's off the walls. It's true Hollywood action right here in Mankato. So he leaves town.
That's crazy.
And the week before, he was in town, and he was on a bus tour of all the projects in town. And I was sitting on the bus next to this woman, and it was a packed bus of people. We're all talking about this stuff, and he had no idea what he was talking about. And I didn't know he was the mayor. I said, well, who's this guy? And she laughed. She goes, why? I said, well, I know more just by reading the Free Press or listening to the local news. And she laughed, and she goes, that's the mayor. And I said, well, I could do that job. So she calls me the week after he leaves, actually the Monday after he had gone from that weekend. She goes, hey, you remember me? I was talking to you on that bus. I'm like, oh, yeah, that. She goes, pretty weird about the mayor. I'm like, yeah, that's pretty weird. She goes, well, remember what you said? I'm like, yeah. She goes, do you think you could do the job? I'm like, sure. I said, I could do the job. She goes, well, I don't know if you remember what I told you what I did. And I'm like, I don't remember what she said at all, I guess. She goes, well, I'm such and such. I work for the Mankato Free Press. So can I quote you that you're going to run for mayor? Oh. And I'm like, well, yeah, because I said it. I believe what I say is what I say, whether it's right or wrong. I said, yeah, I run. So I was one of 12 people who ran for mayor in a special election. Had the third highest vote total. They only took the top 2 contenders, went on to that. So that following spring, the member of the city council who had been on the council for a decade said, I'm not going to run for the at-large position anymore. So if anyone in the community would like to run for this position, this would be a great time to announce. So the next day she calls, she goes, are you going to run again? I'm like, yeah. So I got my name out there. So that's how I got into politics, so to speak.
So for the at-large, I'm assuming it for the individual wards, they have to win the votes for that ward, but for the at-large has to win the entire city of Mankato.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So that's a lot more door-to-door.
Yes.
Wow.
The very first time I door knocked Main Street, it took 2.5 days.
It's almost like running for mayor to be an
Well, it is,
at-large.
yeah, because you are canvassing the whole town.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
Mike, were you putting little papers in people's bags at
I
McDonald's?
had door hangers, Matt. I didn't bake stuff at
Little
McDonald's,
flyers.
but I was familiar with the idea of doing that. Like, how much trouble will I get in?
Clean, let this one fly.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, well, it was her dad at the time. So
Oh, yeah.
So think about your grandpa and her dad. Yeah, that's not going to happen. I mean, and your grandpa. You know, of course, I learned immediately as soon as I got elected. My statewide city orientation was in Fairmont, and I met your grandpa then, which was, I mean, surreal to this day to me. Like, I met him, great guy. Didn't know I was going to have any connection to his life later. Like, yep, I work at McDonald's. I work for Jerry. Yep. Oh, okay. Yep. You own the McDonald's here in Fairmont. Fast forward all these years later, and
Now you're sitting here.
Exactly. I mean, it is.
Yeah.
I find this amazingly, and yet, growing community, small town at the same time. I think that's awesome.
Wow.
So it's hard. Thankfully, after that first time I ran, I had a friend of a friend who had worked on campaigns, and she goes, "No, that's not how you do it. You can, but you're going to waste a lot of time." I'm like, "Okay, so what's the solution?" Secretary of State has a list of voters.
Oh.
And you can get as much information as you want. And it depends how much you want to spend. And I said, well, I don't like spending a lot of money, and I prefer not to, I don't really care who everybody is, but I just need to know a way to streamline this. She said, okay, well, this will give you a list of every voter from the last general election.
Oh.
And it'll give you the address. So if you just want to know there's a voter in 123 Main Street, but there's not at 125, then you can decide
some
where.
time.
Say, yep, exactly. So
I didn't know they did that.
yeah. So, and I can get more detail. I give it like, oh, it's Ethan and Colin, and they live at this address.
Yep.
And here's who they voted for in the last election, which primary, it'll give you a lot more than you want.
Yep.
But that's details I don't need as a nonpartisan.
You have to
person.
pay more for that.
Exactly. So again, it's public information.
Yeah.
So it's available to anyone. So what I did is just said, okay, I just need to give me if there's a voter at this address. And so I went with that, and it became a lot easier because all of a sudden now Main Street took 2-3 hours because not everybody on Main Street votes.
Yeah.
So so that it's tremendous.
Is the percentage, I don't know what the study is, but people who didn't vote in the past have an extremely high chance of not voting in the future? Or is it big, like certain elections are?
My cycle of elections parallels the President of the United States.
Oh, okay.
So, at first I thought that was overwhelming because I'm like, well, everybody votes. So
Yeah.
What I found out quickly is that voter fatigue / not knowing local issues. I mean, there'll be, this coming November, there'll probably be 26,000 people approximately that may vote in Mankato proper for the President of the United States, but less than 7,000 will vote for my race.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think there's been more than 7,000 in the 4 times I've ran.
Same ballot, though?
Same ballot.
But they don't select anything?
Nope. Because, again, it's either voter fatigue because it's federal races, state races, county races, municipal races.
Yeah.
So in one year, it was really people had to turn a ballot over.
Oh, there's so many.
And other times it hasn't. But I think it's just, the idea that, well, I need to know the issues. I need to know what I'm voting for. Mm-hmm. Cities take care of police, fire, sewer, water, parks, snow plowing. And if those things are happening, do you really think about or care about who those people are? I mean, you don't. Until your neighbor's dog is barking, you don't care about the rules on barking dogs.
Yeah.
You don't care about snow plowing or parking. So that's part of it. You hear. I mean, there's no way you can compete with what's happening on the national level. So that messaging is there. So I don't really start campaigning until October because people are just either fed up with what's happening on the federal level, or they have no idea what's going on the local level.
Wow.
So
you're up for re-election this year?
I am up for re-election this year.
Is there other people against you, or do you not know that?
For the first time ever, I'm running unopposed.
Oh.
I would love to say that's strictly because of what a great job I do.
Yeah.
But the realist in me knows that our filing period was when the state decided or was deciding whether or not to open up 100% or the percentage it is now.
Yeah.
As well as then immediately afterwards, George Floyd was murdered.
Oh, okay.
So the news cycle typically mentions, hey, there's races. Here's who's currently on the council, and they did that. But it became a very, two-sentence thing.
There's much bigger things.
Versus, hey, let's get someone else on the city council.
Yeah.
So that again, I've had an opponent every time. The second time I ran, there was a primary, and it was a disgruntled spouse of a city employee who wanted to get their spouse, and it was pointed out to them very early, like, that's not how it works.
No.
See, the city manager hires and fires people, and so that won't happen. And then they're like, oh, but I already paid the money to be on the ballot. Okay, fine. So
Easy one for you.
yeah, exactly. Thank you. Thank you for being very clear on why you want to run. So so that's
Did they get any votes?
they got 100 and some odd votes. I'm guessing immediate family friends of that individual that
Or people that just
said,
don't know. And
we like you. Yeah, and exactly. Yeah. I mean, and then the other side of that, I'm also cognizant of the fact that without having an opponent, I found myself doing that. Like, well, who's this judge that's running for this or the Soil County watershed? I mean, I get there's people, but when there's no one to run against, do I vote? Do
you even have to fill it in?
Right, exactly. That's one of those concerns I think any voter has. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the turnout.
Yeah, I don't know how you do it. The firestorm, the hate from people that are against you in politics. I mean, right now obviously is at an all-time high. But how do you put up with people? Because they can call you, right? And they can reach out to you at any time.
I hear about that sometimes at work.
Yes.
Michael be like, this person.
Well, and I'll
called
give you
me.
an example. So when our council decided to have a public hearing on mandating face mask wearing. Face mask wearing.
Face mask wearing, yeah.
Yeah. I received a little over 600 emails in that 2 weeks between the time we announced we were going to do it and we voted. About 150 phone calls and or text messages.
Holy.
And, all spectrum of people.
Yep.
It wasn't as simple as yes, do it or no, do it. There was a variation of that. I mean, a true rainbow of ideas.
I bet.
Mike, and they call your personal phone, right?
Exactly, because that's listed information.
It's public information.
So my address is on there, my phone number, my email. I mean, it's a city email, but still, that's all there. It goes from we want you to do this because it's right for the health of the community. And then there's, I oppose to the government telling me what to do.
Yeah.
And then there's the extreme, and I think I've told Colin this, it's the guy who said, this is 5G. The government has already put
5G.
chips in the government is putting chips in us already. They're getting the rest of us this way through masks. Bill Gates is involved.
Oh, of course.
And then, it was about a 30-minute preamble he gave me on the phone, and he paused and he goes, are you still there? And I said, yes, I am. Can I ask just one question? And he said, yes. I said, you haven't mentioned the earth is flat yet, so what are you going to do about that? And the expletives came out, and then he hung up. So he never called back, which is fine, because I was like, this was like, wow. It was one of those where I put the phone on speaker and I let my wife and daughter go, here, you need to hear this, because this is hilarious. This is the extreme.
Yeah.
So, and so again, and so here we are today. So that's the other end of it. Anytime someone sees a construction project, it's the city's fault to disrupt their day.
Oh yeah.
Well, why'd you have to do that? Whose idea was it? Why are you spending that money?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, there's a plan. We do our construction projects in 5-year plans, and then every year we review that based on funding. So we already know what the next 5 years worth of projects are, from streets to buildings to parks, all that. Again, we review it every year to make sure the dollars are there to make those decisions, but we already know what 5 years from now we're going to do.
Yep. Huh.
In reality, all of us know in life we do better when we plan. It's tough to say what we're all going to do in 5 years, but boy, if you have at least something to look at and think about. And, I'll give you an example. We have 34 police cars, but we bought them over a series of years to stagger out the expense of replacing them.
Yeah.
And then what we do, and again, this isn't government financing. This is practical financing in my mind. So what we do is we allocate cash for the depreciation of that squad car over its life, so that when we go to need to replace that squad car, we've got cash.
That's smart.
because, we've all had an opportunity to buy a car, and you show up with cash, that changes the outcome at the end of the day of do you owe more, or does the deal get better? And so there's a value there. You can, and other cities do this. It's a financial policy decision. And I'll use North Mankato as an example. Not a bad example, but just an example. They do those purchases strictly on they bond for those or take a loan out. So when they replace squad cars, they'll replace 3-4 squad cars. They'll take a bond out and then pay that out over 10 years.
Interesting.
It's just a financial, philosophical difference.
Yeah.
No different than folks when they buy a house. Well, we'll have to replace the roof in 25 years. So if we don't put away money in for 25 years, we'll probably need to take out a second mortgage.
Yeah, for sure.
Or refinance. And again, people do that all the time.
Yep.
It's not wrong.
No.
It's just how do you want to manage things you're doing?
Yep.
And I think so when some people think they don't understand government accounting, it's like, well, it's actually a lot
pretty
more
complicated.
basic and simple when you think about it. and
Oh,
break it
basic
down.
or simple?
Yeah, I think it is.
Really?
There's some differences. I always giggle when people say, well, government should be run like a business. And I kind of cringe and I'm like, you won't like that. Because,
Explain that.
we control the water.
Ah.
So you want to turn your tap on? Well, gee, a lot of people turn their taps on Saturday. It should be more expensive on Saturday than on Monday. Oh, people like to flush their toilets?
That's a good point,
We're going to change that rate. Well,
Those are business ideals.
Those are business ideas.
Yeah.
So there's some services that you want us to do as cheap as possible. Now, the rates you currently pay for water and sewer are tied directly to the cost of that, from the labor to the chemicals, the treatment, and all that. So you're not paying extra.
No profit.
No, there's no profit. The only time we can charge more, and we're doing that right now in Mankato because we're in a 3-year financial buildup, is we're going to build a new wastewater treatment plant in 3 years. And we're going into year 2. So we have a 3% increase last year, this year, and next year to help us have cash on hand.
Yep.
So when we take out the $48 million loan, we've got cash down to pay off that, to start paying that off away and be able to operate.
Yeah.
So again, those are the kind of things that we all try to think about in our lives.
Yeah.
But we've stood there and went, the ATM is going to give me $20, not 40 or 100, because we, whatever the decision makes. So we go through that. So, again, we want that. A lost leader would be transit. We put in about $186,000 in property taxes to fund the transit system. We're required 90% paid by the state and federal government, 10% local share. That local share has to come from the fare box. So people riding the bus. If it's short, we have to put taxes in there.
Oh.
And so right now it's been running about $186,000 a year.
Wow.
And then there's people that say, well, the transit system sucks in Mankato. It's not on nights. It's not every weekend. It's not these times. It doesn't go by my house. I have to walk 4 blocks. All legitimate concerns of what happens. But the reality is we're getting what we pay for. The federal government expects us, if we want to change the routes, we have a plan for it. Again, we can change the routes. We can adapt how we're doing that. But we have to have a plan and say, here's how we're going to finance it.
Well, and you're never going to make everyone happy.
No.
And I was going to ask you if there's ever been a time when you've been on the city council where you've had as many phone calls, emails, concerns, during this whole COVID thing. Is this the most extreme that you've seen people getting?
No.
Oh, really?
No. In 2004, our city council decided that we would address indoor smoking.
Oh.
And we made the decision to ban indoor smoking at restaurants and bars.
I thought that was all of Minnesota then.
That was in 2006.
Oh, so you guys did 2 years
we were
earlier.
2 years earlier. We were told we were evil. We're going to kill the community. There won't be any business. We'll just go across the river to North Mankato, et cetera. And all those things occurred. But yet we continued to move forward and prosper. The state of Minnesota looked at ourselves, Rochester, Duluth, Moose Lake. Actually, Moose Lake was the first city in Minnesota to do that.
Oh, really?
In 2003. And so we made these decisions, and the state said, okay, let's just kind of make it work statewide. So there was pushback for that and support. I look at it more, I try to pay attention to everybody's thoughts and feelings when they provide them for me and try to respond in some way.
Yeah.
Whether it's to their liking or not is always different.
Yeah.
I always feel that when the council votes on things, whether there's something as highly invested and emotional like that, or it's the $130 million budget, I think if we're not unanimous, that's okay. I think we're doing what the people want or the will of the people.
Yeah.
So when we make 5-2 decisions or 4-3 or 7-0, we're paying attention to what's happening in the community.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Huh. I can't think. I mean, obviously I was alive in 2003 or 2004. I can't remember that whole thing because I was young, but this right now seems like the craziest thing that I can think of happening in a long time with everything.
It is. And, in 2006, the state had a $6 billion deficit, so they cut the funding to cities in November, and they pay the cities twice a year. So it's a little bit like us. We get paid twice a month. The cities get paid twice a year. So they cut off in November. They made the decision to not send a check in December.
Wow.
And so we had a $3.6 million hole in our budget with six weeks to make a change. So we laid off people, which government people don't get laid off and get unemployment. They still have to be paid by the government entity.
Oh.
Because there is no government unemployment.
Yeah.
Because they don't pay into that, because that's for private sector.
Yep.
So we laid off people. People took early retirement. We furloughed all but essential workers from Christmas Day to New Year's Day. So for that whole 7 days,
Wow.
the only people working were the people at the water plant, wastewater plant, police, and fire. So they all got that up. So we did a lot of things. We cut some other projects out. We literally made the decision not to hire seasonal workers the following summer so we could mow less. Mm-hmm. And we heard about it, of course, that the grass was too long in parks. Yeah. But it was a give or take.
Yep.
So we made a lot of those decisions, and then we did raise some fees for things that we could, in the sense that we changed liquor license fees. Again, the sewer and water rates have to tie into the costs, so we can't rate those. So, but we could liquor license fees we could raise because, well, we need to that was directly correlated to the police department. So we could say, well, this helps fund officers, and they show up to do their work. So that made sense.
Huh. I didn't realize that was this all happened in 2006 what you're talking about here.
Yeah, 4 was the smoking, 6 was the state deficit, and then in 2008 the housing market across the country
I thought that maybe
crashed.
was when this whole thing
And again,
happened.
that changed property values, which is the largest income source for the city. Is state and property, both. Not state property, so local property, both federal, commercial, industrial, and residential. So that changed that. But because of our economy being as spread out and diverse as it is, so some industries were heavily impacted, others weren't. The homeowner started paying more.
Yeah.
And is paying more today than they have before. But that's there's a few more other dynamics. The state, for instance, does quite a bit of changing of state taxes on commercial industrial property. There is no statewide residential tax.
Yeah.
But they always put it on the bill. Like they say, state residential tax, 0, as if they charged you something. Now, but they're doing none, so it's a great, so it's a gimmick.
Yeah.
So all your taxes on a city, county, state level are levied that way. So
Interesting. Well, and another thing here, people have wanted me to talk to somebody that's higher up about is downtown bars, masks, the 6 feet, 4 people at a table. Seems like there's a lot of, obviously it's split, a lot of people for it, a lot of people against it. A lot of people that watch are definitely bar crowd, people that are down there. And so they want to know how long is this going to go on for, what... Because Mankato, correct me if I'm wrong.
The answer to that.
No, but correct me. Obviously, no one knows how long COVID's going to
Right.
last. But correct me if I'm wrong. Did Mankato do something before Walls did?
yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so
we instituted a mask mandate. I think it was maybe 2 weeks before he made the announcement on the state level. Maybe 3, but
where do you see this going in the future for restaurants, bars? Because I know there was an outbreak.
The governor actually has to make a decision by Friday of this week to either continue his peacetime emergency powers. Our ordinance is written, and it goes until the 17th of September. So actually, about 10 days from now.
Yeah.
That ours stays in place if the governor rescinds his emergency powers.
Oh, so this Mankato keep going.
Right. Only in the context that we would then, there wouldn't be a hard cutoff.
Okay.
We saw that when he opened up the bars. He made that decision on Wednesday to open them Friday.
Yep.
And that really was traumatic for our bar owners in town.
Was that the weekend? Was that the weekend of the outbreak
Yes.
at Rounders and 507?
Yes, because they weren't ready.
Yeah.
They were anticipating probably some changes, whether it's going to be 25% indoor or 50% or how many tables. All those rules were very fluid.
Yep.
So they found out Wednesday, and they really didn't have the rules in their hands until Thursday, and they opened Friday.
Yeah.
Because again, they're trying to make sure they can cash flow that. So they brought their people back as well as their customers, their staff, and it was a cluster for everybody.
Yeah.
That's why we went with education primary. Now here we are 6-7 weeks later, and we're in the enforcement mode of, okay, you know the rules.
Yep.
You got to follow them.
Yep.
And again, no different in life. There's always a couple places that don't follow the rules.
Yep.
You know, it's not you're driving too fast. It's the guy in the other lane that just passed you that drive too fast. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that we're at. And
Yeah.
so ours is set up intentionally that it would be off center if need be. If the governor decides to rescind his emergency or the peacetime executive orders, you know, we'll probably follow suit.
Yeah.
We'll parallel it for consistency's sake. But again, ours is the ability to go later. Now, because this is all under executive and emergency powers, we can call a council meeting within 48 hours to make those kind of decisions.
Really? Like an emergency council meeting?
Yep. The caveat is it needs a supermajority. So 5 of us have to agree to have the meeting, and then also whatever we're discussing, at least 5 of us have to agree.
Wow.
Which is, I mean,
impossible?
not speaking for my colleagues, but I think most of us would know why we're doing what we're doing before we got to the table.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's going to not be discussed. Doesn't mean that we're not going to consider, but we're going to know why we're getting together and having that discussion.
Yeah.
So,
Has there been a lot of rule breaking in Mankato where, because I was down there one night and I saw the police come in, take pictures, and yell at the bar.
Yep.
This is at South Street. Yell at the bar, people behind the counter, bartenders.
well, and it's what we're having is we're getting those photos sent to us. I mean, I've gotten some sent to me. I know the mayor gets them more often than others.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, this is what we're seeing from people that are there, and the reality is most of the bar owners, not just downtown but across town, they're following all the rules.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, if you're limited by your capacity and you're following the rules, but the place next door isn't, you're twofold. Not only are they getting more business, but also you're probably dealing with that overflow.
Yep.
Because when I've been drinking, I occasionally forget what I'm doing and saying and thinking. And so if you walk out of one place and you didn't have to follow the rules, you walk in a new place,
You're gonna be
all of
mad.
a sudden you're going to start fighting with the bouncer.
Yep.
Or you're going to start shoving the guy next to you.
Yep.
And then all of, it's the ancillary cost. So we're aware of that. And what we've said is we pass all that information on to the state, and they handle and control their wholesale liquor license for buying alcohol.
Yeah.
And if they lose that shuts them down.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because now they're violating felony type stuff if they're buying alcohol and selling it.
Yep. Wow. You guys don't want to do that. You don't want to have to.
No, we prefer to continue. Hey, we've warned you.
Yeah.
Now, we do have a couple of the places in town that we've warned them enough that we said, okay, we're going to cite you. We have a strike matrix set up that if you violate the liquor license agreement with the city of Mankato, this is what will happen.
Yep.
By state statute, we can review liquor license for any reason at any time.
Really?
But we put the strike matrix in to give some cushion. Because one guy fighting with one guy one night doesn't mean you should lose your whole business.
No.
But if every night,
It's a pattern down there.
let's see what. And so with that is the first strike is an administrative fine of $500. Second one is administrative fine of $1,000 and a problem-solving conference between the license holder and the city. What can we do to solve this?
Yep. Kind of sounds like the rental for parties and
stuff. It parallels. That's where we got it.
Oh, okay.
We paralleled because the rental license stuff has been around since the 90s.
Yep.
And so so then the third strike is a possible revoking the license or suspending the license
Yeah.
by the city council. And when we first introduced this, and it actually, yeah, we've done it with a couple of bars, but we've done it with a lot of the rentals back in the early or late 90s. When I first got on the council in 2000, is we were still dealing with probably 20 or 30 rentals a year. And now we're down to, well, I can't think, in this 4-year term, I think we've dealt with one rental license.
Really?
Yeah, because the landlords get it, and so
Yeah.
do the bar owners.
Yeah.
And it's just, you don't want to get to the point where we can jeopardize your business.
Exactly. Yeah.
Especially
You don't
when
want to
we're
deal
giving
with
you these options. And I think out of all those, because they have the ability, because it's an administrative action,
that. Oh.
it's not a criminal action. We're
Yeah.
taking it because it's administering that liquor license agreement or a landlord license.
Yeah.
There's no criminal piece, so it's an administrative hearing.
Okay.
So if you appeal it, which you can do,
Does that become a court
it
thing?
becomes
or-
an administrative court hearing.
Okay.
And really what's before the judge, and we've been successful in almost all the cases, is did the city follow its process? Now, the outcome is certainly in question, but is it because the process was followed or not? So if the process isn't followed, then all of a sudden the city's in jeopardy. And that I think it's happened like 4 or 5 times with rental license and maybe once with a liquor license.
Really?
Where we didn't follow, we didn't
All the
cross our
protocol.
T's and dot our I's.
Yep.
The rest of the time we've been successful, and we always warn the folks, and not as a threat, but we're saying the appeal process. You have 30 days to appeal, so you can make your decision. But if you take the suspension, that happens within 2 weeks.
Okay.
So I'll say this: let's pretend homecoming was still going on.
yeah.
So let's pick the second weekend of October.
Yep.
So if you're a bar owner and you've gotten your license potentially suspended, you want to take your suspension in September, because if you do the appeal, it's going to be at least 30 days. That pushes in October.
Yep.
And let's say you fail at that.
Not
So
good.
then you're closed for homecoming.
yeah.
Or, with the rental license folks, and we can do it up for anywhere from a weekend to, for liquor license, we can do up to a weekend. We've done a week, or we could just take the license away completely.
That's got to be pretty serious for the taking
And
away.
now for the rental license folks, it's been 30-day blocks no matter what. So we always caution them when they show up in May, because they've been the parties from the spring before,
Yep.
and they want to appeal. And we're like, but that gets you into June.
Yep.
And then
People are checking them out.
you might get a delay in there, so it could be July. So you could serve this in August. When are you signing your leases next? Or in most cases, they said, well, I've already signed a lease with kids for next August. Then you might not want to appeal this, because you could end up with the appeal, and then if the city is successful, going into effect in August, which means you break a lease.
Yep.
Now, granted, someone may somehow figure out to hang on and they start in September, but that's not that often. And so, yeah, it's set up to not get to that point.
Yep.
And when we have, I'm always, again, maybe I'm not the right person for this job sometimes, but I'm amused when they do that. Like,
Yeah.
you're so sure you're right.
Yeah.
You're about to risk a year's worth of lease. Now, granted, there's a
crazy.
semester break and you could get someone, but
Yeah.
not as many students
Yeah.
start in January. So,
Huh.
I mean, there's a little bit of think this through.
Uh-huh.
Go home, cool off, talk to your lawyer
Yep.
before you appeal this, because you
Yep.
could end up regretting the decision.
Yeah. Well, it really sucks right now for you guys and business owners, the bar owners and the restaurant owners, because everyone's in such a tough spot right here. You need to make money, but you can only have this many people.
Right.
You can only do this, only do that.
Right.
And,
And we-
you guys don't want to
yeah.
have to enforce it, but you need to.
Yep. So what we did in March is we realized, and in April is when liquor licenses are renewed. So in March, this was all happening. And
Yeah,
we're like,
the
wait,
beginning.
we have renewal in April. Well, renewal would have been on a standard business assumption that you're open 100%. And so we were going to charge people, $8,000 to $10,000 for a liquor license.
Wow.
So we said, pause. Let's suspend the collection until we can see, not that it's going to end soon, but what's happening to the industry. So in August, we passed a new set of licensing. It's 1/3 of the cost.
Oh, really?
Because
That's
we
great.
said, so in essence, they've been operating de facto with last year's license extended.
You guys just weren't checking.
But, well, no, we checked. We just said we're going to continue the license you have.
Oh, okay. Yep.
Not charge, no new license.
Yep.
They're required to have the dram shaft insurance and all that. So it's
Yep.
not like it's cheap.
Mm-hmm.
But we said, based on what we see, no, there's not a time certain when you're going to get back to 100%.
Yeah.
So let's do 1/3 because now it's August. So really the year's 2/3 over almost.
Yeah.
So let's do 1/3.
Yep.
And it's due by the end of September, I think is the ballpark date in my head. So we're giving the break to the liquor license holders that way.
Uh-huh.
The second piece of that is that we already had a pretty straightforward, simple process for applying for outdoor seating. When we just said, same process, no charge, just give us your plan.
Yep.
Prefer it not to be on a napkin. Just put it together.
Yep.
Those that already had a successful outdoor seating wasn't a big stretch for them. A few other folks didn't know what to do, so we helped them with that.
Yep.
So we did that, and you see that all over town with
Oh,
outdoor
yeah.
seating.
Some
all over
creative
town.
stuff.
Yeah, some very creative stuff.
Yeah.
There's Tokyo.
Oh, the sushi place?
Yes, Tokyo Sushi.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that setup.
Yeah.
That to me, I'm like,
Yeah.
this guy should win an award.
You got to get creative though.
Oh, yeah.
And who knows? I'm curious when this is all over, goes back to normal. How much changes that happened during COVID are going to stick? Because I
Exactly.
guarantee there'll be quite a few.
Yeah, I mean, when is that first concert going to be a sellout?
Yeah.
Because immediately it seems like everything's 250 people or less, and there's distancing.
Mm-hmm.
So, you're going to pay $30-$40 to go to a show when there's maybe 250 people there.
Yeah.
I mean, that kind of changes the vibe.
Yeah.
And on the same note, the city is cognizant of, we suspended utility shutoffs in March
Oh.
because we knew that people could be losing jobs.
Yep.
Or businesses closing.
Yep.
So we went from having 3 to 4 shutoffs every quarter of the year to we had over 386 pending shutoffs just based on from March to August.
Yeah.
So we got this far along, and the Minnesota Valley Action Council, MVAC, received $1.1 million in CARES Act money to help people with utility.
I heard
and
about
rent.
that.
So what we did is we said, okay, we have a list of 386 people that we know
Yep.
qualify. Here's the list. We're going to take that ordinance and rescind the suspension and put it back into play because at this point it's a significant amount of revenue.
Yeah.
When the economic downfall of the housing in 2008, that was property taxes. But
Yeah.
people still paid their water bill.
Yep.
Now they're not paying their water bill.
Yeah.
We saw several hundred more stop doing the automatic withdrawal for the utility bills and did I'm writing paper checks again because of the change in the economy.
Yeah.
And that was back in March and April that we saw that. So it was, it was almost 60% of the people stopped doing automatic withdrawals.
Wow.
So that's a real thing. And again, that's revenue the city needs to do. I mean, we need to drink water and flush toilets.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's real basic. So
Yep.
it was interesting. So with that, we moved all those people right over to the MVAC and just said, here's who you're going to contact.
Yep.
Here's how we're going to do this. Work with them, and everybody's been worked with. And so
That's great.
no one lost the ability to have water and sewers. So we'll continue to do that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Because, just because some people had problems this month, next month might be a whole nother story.
Mm-hmm.
So that's in play. Because again, we're going to provide the service, but we want to make sure everyone has what they need. And
Yeah.
that's a basic. That's a basic right, for lack of a better way to say.
That's great that they're doing that. And another positive thing, I'm hearing the cases are going down a little bit. 26 new cases as of Sunday in Blue Earth County is the most recent figures I've heard. I don't know if you've heard anything
I think
different.
I think that's the same one I've heard. Yeah.
And for I saw that the mass testing drew 1,800 plus people, which is probably really good.
I went up there with my wife. We were in and out in 6 minutes.
Really? Is that how it's not
that's from
instant?
the time we left the car till the time we got back in the car.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's not instant though, is it?
No, they contacted us That was Wednesday we went, and by Saturday we had our results.
Really?
So yeah.
I heard they don't have to shove it up.
No,
way up there anymore.
I teared up because I'm a wuss. But I mean, it went up your nose, but it wasn't that far. I guess it was deep enough that I teared up. My wife was fine. So
Yeah.
When I got tested,
she gave birth. She has higher threshold.
When I got tested way back in, I don't even remember, like right when it was starting up, they put it way back in there. I think it was up in my brain.
Because you got tested for strep or whatever, and they have to test.
but they have to test you for COVID if you're going to the doctor.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and I think that's the evolution of it all, for lack of a better way to say it. I think is at play is why they're able to do 1,800 tests in a 2-day.
That's
period.
unbelievable.
And
Yeah.
Again, it was. I mean, I think it went up my nose that far. It felt like this, but it was
Yeah.
more like that. So
Are they all wearing hazmat suits and stuff out there?
they were all geared up. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
That's
it was
crazy.
And it was interesting. They had us remove our masks that we brought and gave us new masks to go in. And that's fine. They just wanted to make sure that what I was wearing was legit. And
Yeah. Interesting. And did Cato do anything as far as like mask, PPE, anything like that for businesses or hospital? Like I know the hospital obviously had to get a ton.
Right. We worked with several organizations in the area as well as in the state, and we distributed tens of thousands of masks and PPE and stuff like that.
Wow.
For area businesses as well as individuals.
Because that was something that I bet has never happened before with the mask. And
No.
You probably never seen anything like that.
No. Well, and the closest I could recall is that there was a meningitis outbreak in the early 90s in Mankato. And so there was a mass inoculation of anyone under the age of 35. And we went up to MSU. You'd park your car at MSU. City bus would take you to the ROTC place off of Pole Road. And then they ran you through a giant army tent, screened you, name, rank, serial number, screened you. You went into a room. And if you're a family or not, they then started separating people out into lines.
Really?
And you got your shot and then your pills. And it was take these pills for the next 2 days, I think it was. And by the way, the side effect is you're going to pee orange for like 3 days. So
wow, I never knew about
everybody's
that.
toilet bowl in Mankato was orange for like 3 days. If you're under the age of 35.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So with that, the knowledge of the community is that we've done this before. So that's why the MSU thing wasn't too big of a startle.
Yeah.
I know we have plans in using the airport for mass inoculation or testing if need to be, because we have a couple hangars that are temperature controlled.
Wow.
So, there's talk about a vaccine allegedly showing up sometime this fall. Well, we have basically the blueprint ready to say, here's how you take and inoculate 40,000 people.
Yeah. It's going to be unbelievable when that happens.
Yeah. And again, considering how some people consider vaccines good or bad, not everyone's, I can tell the political environment of today is there's not going to be a mandate to get that.
Yeah, no way.
I mean that's not going to come from the federal government. That's not going to come from the state government. It's going to be urged.
Yep. I've already been told that if you get the coronavirus vaccine, they're putting a computer chip in you that tracks you. And the person was dead set on that it's happening.
Yeah, because it's not happening by your phone or your laptop or your car at all right now. That's not happening at all. No one knows where you are. When you kind of press OnStar, they don't know where you are.
It's crazy. And the other thing I saw people, I love going on Facebook because you see all these crazy conspiracy theories popping up. And the new one I just saw the other day was if you go on your phone, there's a COVID tracing thing that Apple has put in with a new update. And so you can turn that on, and it will. This is actually a thing. Like I thought it was a conspiracy. If you go in settings, actually, for anybody that wants to check it out,
I will when I get.
I will pull it up right now. The thing is, though, people are acting as if it's supposed to be something like bad.
Yeah.
You turn it on, and if anyone near you has tested positive for COVID, it'll alert you.
Lightning bolt hit them, and then I'm fine. Let's get God involved the right way.
It's under privacy or something. I saw it in here.
I will dig.
Check that out, though. Very interesting stuff. But I do love checking out the conspiracy theories from local people about different things going on because you learn something.
Well, I didn't know that paranormal was as big as it was in Mankato till your show.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched that and I'm like,
we've had the OGs of Mankato.
Demon hunters,
yes.
psychics.
Yeah, I was like, there's there's more than one person that does this in Mankato. It's a
Yup,
group. Like,
yup.
wow.
Yeah, you can find, we got a guy coming on in 3 weeks. We're going to talk about UFOs in Mankato and stuff around the area. So, and we've had.
Is that Michael?
Michael Cimino. It's
Yes.
a different guy coming on
okay.
here. Actually, he's a guy from New Ulm. He's familiar
right.
with, I think his name's Fritz. I can't think of his last name. He wrote for the New Ulm Journal. Really big UFO guy. But if there's anything around the area, it seems like you can find people that are interested in it.
Cool.
If you know any flat earthers, I'd love to have them on.
Yeah, well, that one guy, but I know I'm not.
You probably don't want to talk to
I'm
him
calling
again.
him back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mike probably can't find the call back.
Well, he hung up because either he didn't believe in that or he thought I was insulting him.
Yeah.
So
Can you hang up on people, or you get in trouble for that?
I can, and I mean, when people are rude and belligerent, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a decency level. I mean, and Colin knows this. We get people upset when we put a pickle on their cheeseburger at McDonald's, and I get it because that's not what you wanted.
Yeah.
But the way some people react to that,
Yeah.
so that's
It's
when people
outrageous.
call about the city stuff. Why are they tearing up my street? I'm just like, listen.
Yeah.
Like, would you like me to contact you with more information, or are you done ranting?
Yeah.
And again, once
Yeah.
there's that piece, and
Yeah.
in the 16 years I've been on the city council, because I did lose an election in 2012, so I haven't been on for 20 full years.
Okay.
So, there's only been 2 instances where we've had to put a order of protection and against 2 individuals that tried to come
Really?
to the city council. Yeah, because they became very, very verbally upset, and one got to the point where you thought he was going to flip the table over. So
What was it? Can I ask what was that about? What would make somebody go to that level?
they felt that they owned land where some commercial development has occurred, and they felt that the county conspired against them to minimize the value of the property. And so they were asking the city council to arrest the county administration. And since we weren't going to do that, and this happened over probably a 2-year period
Yeah.
of continually saying no.
Wow.
And the individual was crafty enough that as new members of the city council came on, they would bend the ear. And as a new council member, you're like, I'll listen to anybody because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yep.
And so you don't have a radar in place of, you sound nuts. I should not talk to you.
Yeah.
Right. So you have that person who worked their way over a 2-year period of new council members, and they would come to public hearings, explain this, and we'd have to shut them down. And it got to the point where, you almost flipped the table over.
Wow.
And that probably gets scary since all your public information's out there.
That's
you
what
don't
I'm
know
saying.
what they're
I would
capable
hate
of
that.
doing.
I would hate
yeah,
that.
it's like, okay. And, we've had someone from public safety at our meetings, every council meeting anyway, because they always have a report for us every month.
Yeah.
So it isn't like they're there to protect us.
Uh-huh.
So it's kind of like, there's a dude or dudette here with a gun who's trained to make you, like, this. You just kind of out of the corner of your eye, you're like, what's their body language saying?
Yeah.
Because that's where that's my cue.
Yeah.
This person, again,
Yep.
I've gotten yelled at, spit on my face because I put a pickle on a cheeseburger. So, this person's 6 feet away from me, but what's the person with the gun over here doing? Because
Yeah.
that's going to do, and a taser. What are they doing?
Yep, yep.
They're in their shoulder whispering. That means there's someone else coming. Mm-hmm. So we've had 2 restraining orders, really. They're not order of protection, but restraining orders that they can't come within 100 feet of the city council members, the city administrators, the city buildings. So
Wow. It's
Did
unreal.
you have to go to court for that?
nope.
No.
As an elected official, there's a template that's like, hey, this person's doing this.
Yeah.
And,
It's unreal that people feel that that's the appropriate action to take.
yeah, and that person was clearly upset with what occurred and felt
Yeah.
that they needed to be righted through this method. The other individual, it was a medication with behavioral health, because he showed up upset that we had built a sidewalk on a new street, and the color of paint we used for the sidewalk was too bright when we don't really paint sidewalks. But the individual the
Really?
medications weren't being taken as prescribed,
Wow.
and that was causing a lot of anguish on his part about a lot of things. So
Wow. And that's the kind of stuff
That's life.
well, it is life,
I mean,
but
it's-
if you're an elected official, you put yourself in the spotlight to where
Yeah.
you have to deal with
Absolutely.
crazy people,
Absolutely.
people that just are super mad about
Yeah.
things. And
Mike's dealt with it all. He deals with it.
Yeah.
City council and at work.
I could never do it.
Well, it's you. I mean, again, it takes because you react. You're like, what the heck is going on? But then the other side of it is, wait a second. There's more to this than this issue. There's so much more in your life that's causing this angst.
Yeah.
That this isn't it. I mean, we've done street projects where the property of whether it be a homeowner or a business is paying tens of thousands of dollars in assessments, and that's the cost of having a street with sewer, water, street, curb, gutter, everything like that. So I get the anger or upset about that, but it isn't unique to them because a standard block will have 20 homes on it. So everyone's paying a certain amount related to that. So what I find just odd is that it's usually there's something else in life, and then it's the stories of I've lost my job. Okay, well you can defer this. You can defer it up to 10 years, or if you're over age 65, you can defer it till you sell the house. There's ways to avoid having to pay that if you need to.
Just to educate people.
Yeah,
on what
yeah.
they can
And
do.
again, those are all in play, but it's like there's something else going on that's caused this much anger and hostility. In the 4 different community protests or events I've been at since George Floyd's murder, I haven't been approached by anybody in that capacity.
Really?
It's all been, if anyone knows who I am, it's acknowledging like, good to see you here. And that's, I'm not there for the notoriety. I'm just there as a true support of things need to change.
Yeah.
But I at some point someone would probably get it. I've walked in probably 17 of the Pride. Yeah, there have only been 17 Pride parades because the first 3 years there wasn't a parade. So I've walked in one every year, and I've had my city council shirt on almost every time.
Yeah.
So it isn't like I would not be known as an ally to the GPLTQ. Got the acronym wrong there. Community. Forgive me.
People know who you are.
People know
around
I
here.
are. Yeah. And again, I think I think I have an obligation to be clear.
Yeah.
So people know what I do support and what I don't.
Yep.
So they're not shocked when I show up at events. So.
Or that they can understand there's a face behind a vote.
Yeah,
you know what I
absolutely.
mean? People like that.
Yeah. And I always giggle too when people go, well, when we have a budget and we increase it or we decrease it, whatever the case maybe is, they'll do the city staff will put together this will be approximately $47 for the typical home in Mankato. And someone will say, well, my value changed and it went up $150. It's a lot. And again, okay, like you don't understand. Yeah, I live in town.
Yeah.
I have that same conversation. I sit down and go, okay, we need $150 in the budget next year to pay this. So what are we going to change? Because we need $150.
Yeah.
Can't not pay this.
Yeah.
There's the public relations political side of not paying your taxes as an elected official, but then there's the reality of this is an obligation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to maybe use the police department, but someone's going to.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. That's good to hear, though, that you actually genuinely care about everything and you're willing to go out there.
I think back to a decade ago when my wife was had lost a job at that December, and we're passing the budget. And one of my colleagues goes, well, you don't care because it's only $47. I'm like, I do too. My wife doesn't have a job right now. I'm not sure where I got next month's mortgage.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the new $47. So I need to find the whole mortgage payment. So, and I'm like, yeah. So I do get it.
Yeah.
I've always gotten
story.
it, but it's very poignant right now. And so that's a huge thing that I think people really need to understand is we all live here, we all work here, we all shop here, we get it. So
wow. Well, thank you, Mike, very much. It's been a great discussion.
Well, thank you.
Covered all the points I wanted to get across here and got into a lot more, too. There's a lot of things I didn't know. Me and Colin know now.
Good history behind the
you know a lot about
city.
Mankato. Holy cow.
Well, it's not so much that I grew up here as much as I kept saying, well, again, I look at the city budget, $130 million, a lot of money. But when you break it all down,
Yeah.
it starts to go, okay.
It starts to make a lot more sense.
We're spending $32,000 on the hanging flower baskets downtown. People love them. People think that's not a good use of tax money because, again, two sides to every issue.
Yep.
But it's like, but I need to know what that is because people are going to ask. So,
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's like I said before. Good to know that someone is on the city council who genuinely cares and wants to make decisions.
thank you.
That not only benefit everybody in the community, but you live here too. So everything you do affects you as well.
Oh, yeah.
And people don't realize that.
Yeah.
It's easy to scream at somebody, but when you realize that person has to do the same thing I have to do, it's like,
Exactly.
maybe people will lighten up a little bit. So
Awesome.
thank you,
Thanks
Mike,
a lot.
very much. This has been fun. Next week, we have Trent on, tattoo artist. He's going to tell us about living in Baltimore and then coming to Cato. We'll be back next week. This is the Ethan Clerc Podcast Show.